to it. I think there's a lot of translatable ideas that are helpful in terms of being successful and achieving your peak performance throughout life. So, what specifically about the military, let's talk about, do you feel you learned that translated so well into helping leaders
Hmm.
achieve peak performance?
Well, first and foremost, I'm happy that you said it the way that you said it, because you're right. Life experiences themselves are going to differ from each person. Not everybody's going to be in the military. Not everybody's going to be a bull rider or an athlete. However, if you can experience what you experience and take away from those experiences, those applicable assets to your ability to grow and
Yeah.
achieve and become better in your life and succeed in the things you put your focus to, kudos to you. When I talk about the real world experiences that rattle you from within, that are challenging and scary, those experiences of mine are what molded me into the man that I am today, because they ignited, I would say, an understanding of a gift, a skill that I had that was buried underneath the perfectionism as a young man playing
Mm,
baseball. And when that became apparent to me, especially from bull riding into the military, I was able to then cultivate that gift and skill through my desire to be optimal in my life, be able to face my demons, battle through my stresses, be held accountable in every aspect of what is hindering my power and my potential, and get to a place where I'm able to manage inner volatility. I can handle any situation that I find myself in. I don't live a life of stress. I don't have things that throw me off course no matter what is going on around me. And I have health as my top priority. My relationships are thriving. I have a great business. I'm able to stay in a state of gratitude and peace constantly, no matter what. That is self mastery. So I take the
mm,
military, as you asked. The leadership lessons that I learned in combat, you cannot cultivate in a boardroom or a classroom.
right.
These are real world experiences that you might have a quote plan for. However, there's constant shifts and changes despite what you might be planning for specifically. And I know people that might be listening that are military will understand that. In war and in combat, despite what is thought to be laid out for you, you have to always be vigilant. We call it staying frosty. You have to be focused on those variables that can change at a moment's notice. We might be going into a combat operation where our intelligence says we are facing maybe a few hundred enemy fighter. When we get there, there's 2,000 of them. So you don't understand that this is all we're going to be staunch at, is focusing on this one plan. You have to be willing to be flexible and to flow with the chaos that might ensue despite what you can prepare for. And that to me is where I started to apply in my life when I got out of the military, is despite what is going on, be constantly like water, as Bruce Lee says, flow with the chaos, and being able to access more of yourself comes from that state of being versus you trying to be rigid and try to battle up against it, thinking that just because you have planned for it, it's going to go the way you need it to go. And if it doesn't, somehow it's going to be wrong or you're a failure.
Yeah,
So,
do you think it's because of the dire repercussions of not being prepared in the military? You know, it's when you're faced with battle and you're faced with death and you're
yep.
faced with gunfire, like there's just a different urgency than if you're in the boardroom and look, you might lose $100 million sale. And let's be honest, these Fortune 500 CEOs and directors that you're working with
Yes.
personally
Yes.
as a performance accelerator, the consequences are dire. And
They are.
the repercussions of those consequences could potentially mean the livelihood of many people, not
Right.
their lives, right?
Right.
Like not life and death, but in a
The
way,
livelihood.
the
Right.
livelihood of their career. So do you
Right.
think it's just that, like, because it is life and death, the military, like, if you don't have that contingency tertiary plan, or this hyper focus or awareness on every minute detail.
Say that again. If I can you
So I
can
guess
you
I'm trying to wonder if it's just the life and the death kind of dichotomy that really makes it so that the military, you learn these lessons
well,
or much
yeah.
better than in a boardroom.
I'm glad. Yeah, that's I. You know what ends up happening, and I'm sure there's many guys and gals out there that will relate to this. Is we didn't get caught up in the life or death aspect of combat. We
Mm,
understood that, so it was in the back of our mind. Remember, when you join the military, you might have an idea that I'm going to boot camp, I'm going to my specialized training or school. There's a way they've laid out what I call a framework. So there's no, cookie cutter system that's available. They might have a framework for you that everybody kind of goes through, right? They go through Army Ranger School, SEAL
Yeah.
training, BUDS. You do, combat infantry school. You go to the mortar training, et cetera. Everything has a specific framework. However, how you perform in that framework is going to differ from the guy next to you. It's
Yeah.
all about challenging you and stretching you beyond your limits, emotionally, mentally, and even physically, so you can become the most elite version of yourself. So that when you're in the middle of a war zone, what you're focusing on is innate. It just naturally happens
Mm.
when things start to hit the fan. So you end up performing better because you're so prepared through your training and your ability to surrender and yield into the fear of whatever unknown is becoming a soldier or a SEAL or a Ranger or special forces, whatever it might be, that when in combat, you're able to flex and flow with whatever's showing up because of your ability to stay focused in the training and the experiences of being completely challenged that way. That's why SEALs specifically, right?
Yeah.
They go through the most arduous, most transformative training in the world. There is nobody harder than that. I will give them that. Absolutely. That's why my work is considered the proverbial Navy SEAL training equivalent to high performance and leadership development, because I put my clients through the most extreme challenges in real time with them, as like you said, that Fortune 500 CEO is experiencing the ups and downs with those deals that could potentially cause the livelihood of other people. They need to be completely challenged to eradicate why they're experiencing that up and down to begin with. Same thing with the Navy SEALs. They become the best, most elite version of themselves, but not everybody can be a SEAL. So it's going to take someone who really wants to stay at the top of their game, not just experience it and then fall backwards, that will be willing to go through this type of work. And to finalize that question for you, brother, it's when you can disconnect from the systematic approach to your performance and thinking about things like life or death, or, if I don't follow this strategy, it's not going to work. You actually can, in fact, find better solutions for those chaotic moments that lead you out of it, despite what it may look like. Does that
I
help?
wonder why that is. Yeah, that's interesting, and I know that I
Excuse me.
really kind of look at and admire guys like Jocko Willink, who talk about their SEAL experience, and guys like yourself who have gone through this military kind of leadership training. And one of the things that Jocko talks about is his ability to detach, right? And the
Right.
importance of detaching. And he gives great examples of being in a gunfight and just literally kind of shouldering his gun and taking literally a physical step back, and saying the perspective you receive from that physical action is profound.
Right.
So how can leaders who are kind of lost in this forest and trees, right? Like they can't see the trees through the forest, or the forest through the trees. How can they detach? How can they take a step back and say, let's gain some perspective, let's gain some awareness, and let's make a more strategic
Hmm.
decision and approach?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Jocko. I met Jocko years ago at a specific event with Dave Asprey from Bulletproof Coffee, and
Yeah.
Jocko's he's a great guy. And despite I would say the persona that everybody sees from the outside, because most people hear SEAL, they see his stature, they see his face, and they think completely that alpha disconnected guy, but in reality, he is coming from a place of understanding his own emotions, knowing when to apply his emotions. He was a lieutenant commander
Mhm.
with the most decorated SEAL team in Iraq. So there's that respect level for him. And what he's talking about is being able to be calm and to process your emotions and respect and understand them in those moments that don't interfere with your focus and your ability to complete the task. That detachment doesn't mean you become a heartless psychopath in the middle of chaos. What it really means is, can you take a step back physically, mentally, emotionally, and allow the right response to present
Mhm.
itself, because your ability to set the ego aside, be willing to look at even your own shortcomings, realize that what is it that I'm experiencing right now that might be throwing my mental focus off. That's what Jocko's talking about. It's what I talk about, is can you take that step back and allow yourself that grounded moment to then present the solution, so then you can reapproach that dynamic, but in a very smooth and efficient way, which is why we use that terminology, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. When you can slow down just enough that you can take that breath slower. You can squeeze that trigger a little bit cleaner. You'll get a better shot off and you'll hit your target. So when you comes to your performance, comes to your work, can you take that step back and you slow down just enough to be aware of the stress or chaos that might be presented in those bigger type decisions, and you'll find the answers will present themselves versus you trying to figure it out and try to push through it. Because when you become rigid, that personality flaw of rigidity creates burnout and it causes more problems than it does good. And that's why you have CEOs that'll lose $100 million, which I've experienced with clients before I've come into their life. It's because they have never taken the step back to go, what is holding me back and hindering my performance? What have I not looked at in my life that I've overlooked, swept under the rug, disregarded, or chalked up to just being a part of business? Those things, in fact, are hurting your performance. And when you can step back, like he says, like I've talked about, and really assess that in a brief moment, you'll find the answers will be more abundant for you, and your performance as a leader will actually accelerate quicker for you and resulting in the things that you want to have happen.